My sister said you just don't know how to be happy. She took everything, my husband, my house, my job. My sister betrayed me and said it was my own fault. But I was weak only once. Now it's my turn to make the moves. It's funny how life can change in the blink of an eye. One moment everything is normal, comfortable, familiar. The next, you're standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a world that's suddenly foreign and unrecognizable. The ground beneath you cracks, and you fall, not knowing where you'll land. That's how I felt when she said it, when my own sister looked at me with that smug, cold smile and said, "You just don't know how to be happy." I didn't even understand what she meant at first. It was as if the words didn't belong to the conversation we were having. We were supposed to be talking about the wedding plans, my wedding plans. And yet, in one simple sentence, she shattered everything. It had been a normal Sunday afternoon. The sun filtered through the windows of our cozy living room, casting soft golden light on the furniture I had carefully chosen, the little pieces of art I had picked out with such pride. The house had always felt like my sanctuary, my safe place, but today, everything felt wrong. My sister, Emily, sat across from me. She was beautiful, poised, everything I wasn't. I had always envied her, though I didn't let it show. She had a way of making everything seem effortless, whether it was her looks, her charm, or the way she moved through life. I, on the other hand, had always struggled to feel like I belonged. I was the quiet one, the thoughtful one, the one who watched from the sidelines as others took the spotlight. But this time, this conversation had been mine. It was about me, my upcoming wedding to Jason, the man I thought was my soulmate. We had been together for 5 years, building a life together, or so I thought. It was a small, intimate wedding, just a few close friends and family, people who truly mattered. Emily was supposed to be there with me, my maid of honor, but there was a coldness to her lately, a distance I couldn't explain. She wasn't the same, and I knew it, but I refused to confront it. I didn't want to believe what my gut was telling me. And yet, there we were, sitting on the couch, talking about nothing, until she casually dropped the bomb. "You just don't know how to be happy," she said, her voice so calm, so assured, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I froze, my heart skipped a beat. Was she talking about me? Was she accusing me of something? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. I looked at her, searching her face for a hint of something, but there was nothing, just that empty, almost pitying look in her eyes. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I felt dizzy, like the room was spinning. It was the strangest sensation, this sense that I was no longer in control of anything. "Excuse me?" I managed to croak, my voice thick with confusion. Emily sighed, leaning back in the couch with a look of exasperation, as if she were talking to a child. I said, "You just don't know how to be happy. You keep holding on to this idea of what life should be like, what people should be like, and it's too much. You need to let go and embrace what's right in front of you." I blinked at her, my chest tightening. Was she talking about Jason, about the wedding, or was she talking about something else, something deeper? "What are you trying to say?" My voice was barely a whisper now. The words felt like they were lodged in my throat, too heavy to get out. Her eyes narrowed, just a little, before she leaned forward, lowering her voice, as though she were about to share some great truth. "You're too rigid, too stuck in your ways. That's why Jason's been so distant lately. You're not giving him what he needs, and I think you know that." The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Jason, distant? I hadn't noticed anything, or maybe I had, and I'd just been too afraid to admit it. The cracks had been there, just small ones at first, but now, Emily's words made them seem so much bigger, and suddenly, I wasn't sure where I was standing anymore. "Jason and we're fine," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a lie. Emily's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Sure, whatever you need to tell yourself." I felt a chill in the air, It wasn't just the words she said, it was the way she said them. Like she already knew the truth. The truth that I was too afraid to face. The truth that something had been wrong in my relationship for a while now. And I had ignored it, too caught up in my own idealized version of things to see the reality. But the words she spoke next, those were the ones that broke me. "I'm sorry, but Jason and I, well, we've been seeing each other." She paused, as if waiting for the shock to settle in. "I didn't want to hurt you, but it's been going on for a while now." I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. My heart, it shattered into a million pieces, and the ground beneath me began to tilt, as if the entire world had been turned upside down. Jason, my fiancé, my partner, the man I had planned my future with, had been seeing my sister, behind my back, and she was sitting here, calmly telling me about it as if it were some trivial detail. I felt nauseous, my vision blurred, and I blinked rapidly, trying to focus, to hold on to something, anything, that could anchor me in this reality that no longer felt real. But nothing made sense, not the words she said, not the look on her face, not the betrayal that was slicing through me like a knife. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand answers, but all I could do was sit there, completely paralyzed by the depth of the betrayal. How could she? How could my own sister, my flesh and blood, do this to me? The silence in the room was deafening. It felt like the air had thickened, and I couldn't breathe. I needed to escape. I needed to get out of here, away from this house, away from this pain, but I couldn't move, not yet. I had to hear it all. Emily stood up, as if she were done with this conversation, her words cutting through the quiet. "I know you're upset, but you'll be fine. You just need to stop clinging to your perfect little world. Life isn't like that. It's messy, and you just don't know how to be happy in the mess." The sound of her footsteps leaving the room was the final blow. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was left alone, sitting in the same house that once felt like home, but now, it felt like a prison. How did I not see it? I kept asking myself, but the truth was, I had been too blind, too trusting. I never saw the cracks until they were wide enough to swallow me whole. And I wasn't sure if I could ever put myself back together again. But one thing was certain, this was far from over. It was only just beginning. The days that followed were a blur. Time moved on, but I didn't feel like I was part of it. I was caught in this strange, suffocating haze, trying to process what had just happened, trying to come to terms with the reality of what my sister had done. I didn't leave the house for the first few days. I couldn't. How could I? Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of the life that had once been mine. The same house, the same furniture, the same pictures on the walls. But now, everything felt like a lie. My fingers traced the edges of the coffee table Jason and I had picked out together. The one we had spent hours debating over, laughing and joking about which one would fit best in the living room. It all seemed so trivial now, so insignificant. What was it all worth if the man I loved had been secretly betraying me? I couldn't think straight. The betrayal, the hurt, the confusion, they clouded everything. I couldn't even find the energy to cry. All I felt was this numbness, like a hollow emptiness inside my chest. And then there was the anger, the gnawing, insistent anger that grew louder every day, every hour. But it was more than anger at Emily or Jason. It was anger at myself for being so naive, for trusting them both. But I couldn't let myself stay in this fog forever. I couldn't keep hiding away, trapped in this broken life I had no idea how to repair, and I certainly couldn't let Emily think she had one. I had to get out. I had to reclaim something, anything, before I lost everything. So, I did what I've always done when faced with something I don't understand. I observed. I watched. I started going outside again, though it felt like an effort, like I was forcing myself to take steps that should have been natural. I spent my days at the little cafe down the street, pretending to read a book, but really just watching them, Jason and Emily, living their new life together, their life. I saw them more than once at the cafe, sitting at a table in the corner, laughing together in a way that made my stomach turn. Jason's hand would casually rest on her arm, his fingers brushing against her skin as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And she looked at him the way she used to look at me, that sparkle in her eye, that softness in her voice when she spoke to him. I wanted to scream at them, to run up to them and demand answers, to make them see the damage they had caused, but I didn't. Instead, I just watched. It was sickening, but it was also the only way I could keep my sanity. It was the only way I could remind myself that I wasn't completely defeated, that I wasn't completely broken. I began to piece together their lives from the shadows, carefully observing the things I couldn't see when I was too close to the situation. Emily wasn't perfect. She wasn't some flawless goddess that had stolen my life for the sheer enjoyment of it. No, there were cracks in her, too, small ones, but noticeable if you looked closely enough. I noticed how she always tried so hard to control everything around her, the way she smiled a little too brightly in public, as if trying to convince herself more than anyone else that everything was perfect, how she clung to Jason in front of others, but when they were alone, she became distant, almost tired of him. And then there were the little moments, when she wasn't looking, when she would catch herself staring at Jason with a flicker of doubt in her eyes. It was almost as if she wasn't sure she had made the right choice after all, almost as if she was starting to question whether the life she had stolen from me was really the life she wanted. I saw it, the uncertainty, the cracks. But the most powerful realization came when I overheard them talking late one night. I had been sitting in the car, parked outside their apartment, unable to bring myself to leave. I saw them through the window, standing in the kitchen, talking softly but urgently. "I don't think she'll ever forgive me," Emily said, her voice barely audible through the glass. There was a note of uncertainty in her words that I had never heard before. Jason's response was quieter. "It's not about forgiveness anymore, Em. It's about what we want, what we need." I held my breath, straining to hear the rest of their conversation, but I couldn't catch anything else. I sat there for what felt like hours, processing what I had just overheard. "It's not about forgiveness anymore." That hit me harder than I expected, because in that moment, I realized Jason wasn't in love with her, not in the way he was supposed to be, and Emily, she wasn't as sure of herself as she seemed. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. They were both lying, to me, to themselves. And maybe, just maybe, they hadn't won after all. I had to be patient. I couldn't rush this. I knew that if I wanted to come out of this hole, I couldn't let my emotions control me. I couldn't go back to them, angry and desperate for answers. That wasn't going to fix anything. No, I needed to wait. I needed to play this right. In the meantime, I started to rebuild. Not my life, not yet. That would take time, but I started with my strength. I went back to work, back to the things that used to make me feel whole. I spent hours at the gym, getting my body back into shape. I met new people, reconnected with old friends who had been forgotten in the chaos of my relationship with Jason. Slowly, the fragments of my life began to come back together, but it was the slow recovery, the painful, exhausting journey of rediscovery, that gave me the strength to keep moving forward. But I wasn't done watching. I couldn't be, not yet. And when the time came, when I was finally strong enough, when I understood them better than they understood themselves, I would show them both exactly who had been weak all along. I wasn't going to seek revenge, not in the way they expected. I was going to show them something much worse. I was going to take control, and when I did, they would realize that it wasn't me who had been weak. It was them. The weeks passed slowly, but there was a quiet determination in every step I took. Each day, I focused on a different piece of myself, repairing what I could. Even if it seemed insignificant at first, I found solace in the small victories, in the simple moments when I realized that I was still capable of feeling joy, despite everything that had happened. But I couldn't deny that a part of me still simmered with the need for something more. I had to rebuild myself, yes, but not just for the sake of survival. I had to rebuild with a purpose, and that purpose was waiting for the right moment to take back everything they had stolen from me. I had made the mistake of thinking that Emily's betrayal was an isolated act. I thought, maybe, that once I was strong enough, once I could see clearly again, I would find some way to forgive her. But the more I watched her, the more I listened to the conversations Jason and I had shared so many times, the more I realized the truth. Emily wasn't just my sister, she was someone who had always been determined to take what she wanted, regardless of the cost. And Jason? He wasn't the man I thought he was, either. They both were hiding cracks, and those cracks were growing wider. Emily had built her life on a foundation of deception, and Jason wasn't sure how long he could live with the weight of it. I could see it in his eyes when I saw him, saw the guilt and the confusion that sometimes flickered in his expression. They were trying to convince themselves that they had made the right choice, that they were in control, but I knew better now. They weren't in control at all. I kept watching them, though. That was crucial. I didn't approach them. I didn't speak to them. I stayed in the shadows, where they couldn't see me, where they couldn't feel my presence. I knew their routines. I knew when they went out for dinner, when they went to the grocery store, when they were most likely to take a walk together. In the meantime, I began working my way back into the things I used to care about. I started taking up photography again. I hadn't picked up my camera in months, years, even, but when I did, it felt like a part of me had been returned. It was my escape, my therapy. Slowly, I found myself again, but it wasn't just about reclaiming my old life. It was about creating a new one where I was in control. The hardest part, though, was facing Emily. I still couldn't bring myself to confront her directly. Not yet. She hadn't earned that. But there was something in the air between us when we saw each other. A palpable tension that I could feel every time I passed her on the street or bumped into her at the grocery store. There were no words spoken, but the air was thick with the things we were both afraid to say. One evening, while I was out for a walk, I saw her standing outside her apartment building, chatting with a group of friends. She was laughing, as usual, that soft, seductive laugh that had always drawn people in. But this time, I saw something else, a glimmer of discomfort in her eyes, a subtle hesitation as she glanced around, as though checking for something or someone. I stood there, hidden in the shadow of a nearby tree, watching her, and I saw it again, the doubt, the insecurity. It was like a flicker, so faint that most people would have missed it, but not me, not anymore. I was learning to read the signs, and I knew then Emily wasn't as untouchable as she thought. That night, after I returned home, I sat in front of my mirror and examined myself, my hair, my face, my body. I was slowly reclaiming the parts of myself I had neglected, but there was more to this than just looking good on the outside. I wasn't going to be the woman who fell apart and stayed in the rubble. I wasn't going to be the weak one. No. This was my time to become something greater than I ever thought I could be. So I made a decision. It was time to play the game, but not as Emily and Jason played it. I wasn't going to act out of anger or frustration. I wasn't going to lash out. Instead, I was going to make them believe they had one, that they had everything. I was going to let them think they were safe, that their new life together was impenetrable. But it wasn't. And when I was ready, when they least expected it, I would make my move. The key was patience. I had learned that much. Revenge wasn't the answer. No, I wasn't going to waste my time with that. What mattered now was control, regaining control of my life, my future, my dignity. Emily didn't know it yet, but I was already one step ahead of her, and the more I watched, the more I saw her cracks were starting to show. Her so-called perfect life was anything but. I had the power to expose the truth, to show the world exactly who she really was. I wasn't going to confront her directly. I wasn't going to make a scene, but I knew what I was capable of. I knew what I had learned in the silence, in the waiting, and when the time came, I would be ready. Emily and Jason had taken everything from me, but I wasn't going to let them have the last word. And in the end, it wasn't going to be about revenge. It was going to be about victory, my victory. It's funny how time has a way of shaping you, changing your perspective on things. When I first started this journey, when all of this was still so fresh and raw, I thought I would break. I thought I would crumble under the weight of the betrayal, under the suffocating reality that my own sister, the one person who should have been my ally, had taken everything from me. But here I was, standing on the brink of something bigger than I had ever imagined. And for the first time in months, I felt a quiet kind of power within me. I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. I was becoming stronger with every passing day. Emily, with all her confidence, her perfect facade, she had never been more vulnerable than she was now. I could see it clearly. She had taken everything from me, yes, but she had also made herself a prisoner of her own choices. Jason, too, was unraveling, though not as quickly as Emily. He still wore his guilt like a second skin, trying to mask it with the pretense of a perfect life with her. But guilt is a heavy burden to bear, and no amount of pretending can make it go away. I kept to the shadows, watching them closely, reading every small change in their behavior. I knew it was time to make my move, but I wasn't going to do it in the way they thought I would. I wasn't going to scream or yell or cause a scene. No, that wasn't my style anymore. This time, I was going to take control, and I was going to do it quietly, with calculated precision. There was no room for emotion in my plan, only logic, and as much as it stung to admit, I had learned to think like them. Emily had always thrived on the idea of having everything, my house, my life, my husband. She liked the feeling of being on top, of being the one everyone looked up to, but it was a fragile thing, built on lies, and I had the power to expose those lies, to strip away the illusion she had so carefully constructed. One afternoon, I took a walk to the old house, the house that had once been mine, the one she now lived in with Jason. I stood across the street, watching it. I could almost see the ghosts of the past lingering in the windows, memories of a life I had worked so hard to build, only to have it stolen away. But as I stood there, I felt no anger, not anymore. Instead, I felt something else, peace. I had let go of the idea that I needed to take everything back. I didn't need that house, that life, or even Jason. What I needed was something more important, control over my own destiny. As I turned to leave, I spotted Emily's car pulling into the driveway. She was getting out, her face bright with that smile of hers, the one that made everyone believe she had it all. She waved at a neighbor as she walked up the steps, and for a moment, I could almost see her as the person she used to be, my sister, the one I had once trusted above all others. But that was then. This was now. I didn't need to confront her. I didn't need to make her feel the sting of my betrayal. No, I was already winning. I was already in control, and in that moment, I realized something profound. She had been wrong all along. She had believed that she was stronger, that she was the one in charge, but in reality, she had been the weak one all along. I had been broken, yes, but I had rebuilt myself from the ground up, and now, I was stronger than she would ever be. The final piece of my plan fell into place when I received the phone call. The lawyer, the one I had contacted weeks ago to retrieve certain documents I had left behind when I moved out of the house, documents that would be critical in proving my case, in showing that I had been the true owner of everything that mattered. I made my way to his office, my heart steady, my mind sharp. When I walked in, he greeted me with a kind smile, but I could see the professional distance in his eyes. He knew why I was there. "I have the papers you requested," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "These will show that the property was originally yours, that your name was on everything. It's all here." I took the envelope from him, my fingers brushing against the crisp paper. This was it, the final act. "You've done well," I said quietly, giving him a small nod of appreciation. I walked out of the office, my steps purposeful. The weight of what I was about to do didn't hit me until I was back in my car, driving toward the one place that still held the power to destroy everything Emily had worked for. But it wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about control. It was about taking back the pieces of myself I had lost, showing them, who was truly in charge. I made my way to Emily's apartment building, the one she shared with Jason. As I parked my car, I could feel the shift in the air, the way the world seemed to pause for a breath. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making her pay for what she had done. It was about showing her that, despite everything, I had come out stronger. I walked to the entrance of the building, my steps steady, and when I reached the door to their apartment, I didn't hesitate. I knocked once, then waited. When Emily opened the door, her smile faltered just slightly. She hadn't expected me. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice calm, steady. She stepped aside, almost reluctantly, and I entered. Jason was sitting on the couch, his eyes flicking to me with a mix of surprise and unease. He knew something was coming. He could feel it, just as Emily could. "I know what you did," I said softly, my gaze fixed on Emily. She froze, and I saw a brief flash of panic in her eyes. "I'm not here to make a scene," I continued. "I'm here because I'm taking back what's mine." Emily opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, silencing her. "No, you don't get to speak, not yet. I just wanted to let you know that I'm reclaiming my life. I'm stronger than you'll ever be." I turned to leave, but before I did, I glanced back one last time. Emily stood there, her face pale, her perfect world starting to crumble. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something that had long been absent from my life: peace.